my topic for the persuasive speech is that the poor mental health of Native Americans due to the lack of representation is an important issue that needs to be addressed. Raise your hand if when you think of Native Americans, you think of wild horse riding people who carry a bow and arrow, wear feathers, and are covered in face paint. Did you know, according to the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs, 2.9% of the population identifies as American Indian or Alaska Native. Also, for Native American youth, the rate of suicide is 2.5 times higher than the rest of the country. It is the highest youth suicide rate among all other races or ethnicities in the country. Based on Native American mental health statistics, it is estimated that up to 70% of the population will suffer some sort of mental health disorder during their lifetime. That's over 4 million suffering from extreme mental health disorders. So I have narrowed it down to 3 main parts of my speech, which are going to be 1, just the situation of the Native American mental health crisis, where this all started, like the main cause, and then 3, what is happening right now. And the second point is historical trauma, which is how did this happen, when did this happen, and why. And then the third is lack of representation and how that is continuing this crisis in the current times. Native American mental health issues are extremely important. Native Americans, most of them, majority, suffer from mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. But for most Native Americans in their languages, there's not even a word that translates to anxiety, depression, or even suicide. This means they aren't even aware of the mental health problems they're facing, and they can't understand it based off of their language. They also don't have the resources to help seek help, such as clinics, therapists, and doctors. Most of them see their tribe healers if they do end up seeking help. As well as economic barriers that prevent them from receiving treatment due to the high levels of poverty. In Native American culture, there is an elevated risk of suicide due to the influence of the fact that 26% of Native Americans live in poverty, as well as higher rates of alcohol and drug abuse compared to all other ethnic groups. Their mental health is directly impacted by historical trauma, alienation, discrimination, community violence, lack of access to care, and exposure to suicide. So, where did this extreme mental health issue for Native Americans come from? Historical trauma. Historical trauma is multi-generational trauma experienced by a specific culture, racial, or ethnic group. It is related to major events that oppressed a particular group of people because of their status as oppressed. Because the indigenous Native Americans have endured generations of historical trauma by being forced from their homeland, stripped of their resources, and have had much of their culture taken away, which has directly resulted in high rates of poverty and self-destruction, which has then contributed to the high rates of mental health and substance abuse disorders among the Native American population. The pain and anguish over the forcible separation from their homeland and the cruel cultural suppression, as well as stigmas from the government and through the popular media, the daily injustices of discrimination and inequality have all created and continue to create for Native Americans of all ages across Native America a reality of being unimportant and invisible. So, what is currently happening to add to this mental health crisis of Native Americans? Lack of representation is one of the most direct causes of this Native American mental health crisis, because Native Americans have almost no political, media, or social representation. Native Americans experience relative invisibility in the media. And when they are included, they generally are portrayed as historical figures who wear buckskin, ride horses, or live in teepees. And when they are shown as modern people, they are often associated with addiction, poverty, and lack of formal education. There's 0.09% of TV shows and cartoons that actually portray Native Americans in any kind of respectful sense. Native Americans are not represented politically as well, and an estimated 1 in 7 Native Americans live on tribal lands and were not counted in the last U.S. Census. That means that most Native Americans, which are 2% of the U.S. population, are the group most likely to be missed, as well as an estimated 1 in 3 Native people most likely, as well as 1 in 3 Native people living on what the Census Bureau considers hard to count rural census tracts, which represents 80% of all tribal lands. I would just like to leave you all with this quote to show the severity of the mental health problems for Native Americans. If we do not find a way to seek change this epidemic, we will have done what the bullets, the treaties, the boarding schools did not do. We will have succeeded in probably eliminating Indian culture in a meaningful way, because there just won't be very many of us left who are healthy enough to pass it on. Thank you.